Good morning and welcome today to your AQA GCSE History walkthrough for the America paper for question 1. So the first part for any type of question is that we need to be able to understand the question. Now, to be able to understand the question, the first thing you need to do is just read through what it's asking us. So it says read interpretations A and B in the interpretation booklet. How does interpretation B differ from interpretation A about immigrants in America in the 1920s? Explain your answer based on what it says in interpretation A and interpretation B. So the first thing we do with any question is we need to know and we need to ask ourselves, what part of USA history is this question asking us about? And from having read through this, I know the question is asking us about immigrants in America in the 1920s. After that, I asked myself, what else is the question asking me to do or asking me to use? And I know it's asking me about how do they, or interpretation B, differ from interpretation A. Straight away, this tells me that I need to focus on immigrants in America in the 1920s, but to be able to do that, I need to use A and B. And then to finish off, I can use this bit below to remind me of how to answer the question, because it says, explain your answer based on what it says in interpretation A and interpretation B. So I can now do a little reminder. So if I'm looking at what it says in interpretation A and interpretation B, I know that one is going to be positive or negative usually. If you get two that are quite positive or two that are quite negative, you can go less positive or more positive. So I know I'm using what it says. So that means I'm going to need to use a quote from interpretation A and interpretation B. And I need to know as well that for top marks, I can put it into, or say what it suggests in my own words. And this little structure here will be useful when I analyse my interpretations. So now I need to analyse my interpretations, look through it, and I have the interpretations here. Now, if you've watched my previous video on straight away how to analyse your interpretation, which you should have done, you'll know that straight away I do 2, 1, 3 for each one. And I know that I'm focusing on question 1, so I only need the bits that are in the box. And it's telling me to use A and B, so I need to use A and I need to use B. And as you can see here, I need something that is positive or negative, first of all, about immigrants in America in the 1920s. So I'm going to read through 1. So it says, interpretation A, thousands of immigrants have arrived in the past 20 years. This has made America the dumping ground for every sort of criminal and undesirable from other countries. They have no respect for our laws. They do not appreciate our great achievements created by the hard work and sacrifice of others. They are only waiting for the chance to replace the stars and stripes with the red flag of communism. So straight away, I can see that there is a lot of negativity here. So I'm going to put negative there. Now that will mean straight away that I can say interpretation B is likely to be positive. But we can't stop there. We need to find a quote to back ourselves up. And I would be looking around why this is negative. Now you need to link it to immigrants in America in the 1920s. So what here is negative about immigrants in the 1920s? Well, it says they do not appreciate our great achievements, and that is one thing that is absolutely negative, but there's many more that you could have picked out of there. What I then need to do is I need to put this into my own words. So I've done a positive, I've done a quote, now I need to say what this suggests. I need to put that into my own words. So if they do not appreciate, so another word for appreciate, I would say ignorant. in terms of that, that's a use of our own word, a word that isn't in the text, so that's what it suggests. As a result, if something's ignorant, I would also say it's disrespectful. So there are some words I can use for myself. And once I've done the negative, I just do exactly the same with the positive. So I'll zoom in a little bit. And here it says, immigrants are no threat to America, but are good citizens. They are active in every profession and walk of life. They often do the hard work that many Americans dislike. They've come to the country to stay and to make a new life for themselves. Immigrants take pride in how quickly they become part of American society and have adapted to our way of life. So what's really important here is we just follow that same structure. We know it's positive. We now need a quote to support that. And I would be picking out the following about how they often do the hard work that many Americans dislike. And then what I do is I think, okay, what do these words mean if I had to put this into my own words? If they often do the hard work, well, hard work to me, that's vital to anyone. So I'd say that means they are vital, so important. That many Americans dislike. So what type of work apparently do Americans dislike? Potentially hard labour. So again, just turning it into or using my own language, my own words. And that is how I would briefly plan it. Now what you need to note is that this question is 4 marks, so 5 minutes. So although this has taken me quite a bit to explain, this needs to be a lot quicker in your exam. It needs to be rapid, you need to know exactly what you're doing, pick out a quote and get on with it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at some teacher answers. And first of all, we're going to look at how to get half marks, which is how to get you a grade 4 at History GCSE. So straight away, I said that in this answer, A is negative about immigrants in America in the 1920s. So use the language of the question. It says immigrants do not appreciate our great achievements. And B is positive about immigrants in the 1920s because it says immigrants often do the hard work that many Americans won't. So what I've done there is I've identified a quote and I've also said that A is negative and B is positive. So I've identified how they differ. Remember, that's the element of the question, how they differ. One is negative, one is positive. I've used a quote about immigrants in the 1920s, and that will get you 2 out of 4 marks. If you can successfully, so the positive or negative, and a quote to support each one. And now this is how you kind of elevate your answer to get full marks. So this is going to be a 4 out of 4 model answer. If you want to get your grades 8s and 9s, which we should be aiming for, you are going to need to be able to get 4 out of 4 on this question. So on this question, in my answer, I've identified that A is negative about immigrants in the 1920s, but it says immigrants do not appreciate our greatest achievements or our great achievements. So I said it's negative, I've used a quote. Then I need to say what this suggests. So I said this suggests that immigrants were ignorant of American history and as a result disrespectful to Americans. So nowhere in my answer, in the interpretation, does it say immigrants were ignorant or they were disrespectful, but those are words that I've picked out. I've then gone on to identify how this differs. Well, they differ because B is positive about immigrants in the 1920s, because it says immigrants often do the hard work that many Americans won't. And again, I need to now use some of my own words. What does this suggest? Well, it suggests that immigrants play a vital role in the everyday workplace of American industry. So again, nowhere in the interpretations does it talk about vital or everyday workplace, but That's what it suggests, and that's where you're going to elevate your answer to 3 or 4 marks. So again here, what I can see if I'm an examiner is I've said if it's positive or negative both times, I've used a quote both times, and I've used my own language both times in terms of what it suggests. And that would be a 4 out of 4 answer. Now what we're going to do really quickly is look through a couple of common mistakes. It's really important that we look at this because ultimately this is what I keep seeing from your exam answers. So let's have a look at how we can avoid these. So the first thing that a lot of people do is they confuse how to answer question 1. So for example, the answer here says A was written by a Ku Klux Klan member. And B was written by a businessman. Now it's really important that we don't do this, and if we look at our interpretations, this answer here is talking about what is meant for question 2. If you write about what is meant for question 2 for question 1, you will get 0 marks. So you will get 0 marks for this, even if you're talking about what it suggests. This is 0 marks, because you're talking about what's meant for question 2 in question 1. So you have to talk about this part for question 1. If you talk about this part, you will get 0 marks. And it is the same for interpretation B. That is why we've done this quick 2, 1, 3, so you know you cannot be talking about 2 here or here for question 1. And finally, another common mistake we're doing is that someone will talk about A is negative about immigrants, saying they don't appreciate our greatest achievement, and talk about what it suggests. And then they'd say, I know this is true because many immigrants had a different ideology to that of capitalist America. This is all really impressive language, it's really good, but it's not doing what the question is asking you to do. So this bit here is all irrelevant. You should not be using any contextual knowledge, any own knowledge here. It's not needed. And ultimately, what you've not done is you've not answered the question. It's asking you about how they differ. And if you only write about A and don't write about B, you will get 0 marks. So you need to talk about both interpretations. And not use own knowledge. So I'd say the most important thing here though, in terms of a top tip, is that you really need, when you get your interpretations, to do the 2, 1, 3. Because that will tell you which part of the interpretations you need to use for your answer.